Derek Stone had been in worse situations, but not by much, and the cold metal chair beneath him reminded him exactly how bad this one was turning out to be. The interrogation room was sparse and clinical, with walls that seemed to absorb sound and light in equal measure, and across from him sat Commander Syria of the Valtorian Intelligence Division, with eyes like polished amber that hadn't blinked in what felt like hours. She was tall even by her species standards, with silver skin that caught the harsh overhead lighting and moved with a predatory grace that made most beings instinctively step back when she entered a room. Derek, however, just smiled at her. "You understand the situation you are in," the commander said in perfect English, though her accent made each word sound sharp and precise like glass breaking. "Sure," Derek replied, leaning back as much as his restraints allowed. "I'm a human caught running medical supplies to people you don't like, and you're going to ask me questions I won't answer, and well, dance this dance until one of us gets bored." Syria tilted her head in a gesture that might have been curiosity, or might have been the precursor to violence with her species. It was hard to tell. Most prisoners beg or threaten by this point, she observed. Humans are supposed to be emotional creatures, yet you sit there making jokes. Derek shrugged as best he could. "Well, what can I say? We get told we're going to die so often that we kind of stop taking it seriously." The interrogation continued for hours and then days, and Syria employed every technique in her considerable arsenal, from sleep deprivation to sensory overload to carefully calibrated pain that left no permanent marks. Derek endured it all, and what disturbed Syria most was that he actually seemed to be adapting to it, and by the third day he was making casual conversation between sessions, asking her about Valtorian culture and whether she preferred the morning or evening shifts. On the fifth day something changed. Syria arrived for their session to find Derek had somehow picked his restraints and was sitting cross-legged on the floor, doing what appeared to be meditation exercises. Before she could sound the alarm, he looked up and raised his hands. "In surrender, easy commander, I wasn't going anywhere. I just needed to stretch and the chair was killing my back." She should have called security, but instead found herself asking, "How did you break military-grade restraints with no tools?" Derek grinned. "Oh, these." He gestured at the discarded cuffs. "Yeah, those are designed for species with standard bone density and joint flexibility. But humans evolved as persistence hunters, which means our joints are freakishly flexible and our pain tolerance is kind of absurd, show me," she said, and immediately wondered why she cared. He did, and explained the biomechanics of human anatomy in simple terms, and Syria found herself fascinated by this species that seemed to have evolved specifically to refuse, to quit no matter what the universe threw at them. That night an explosion rocked the detention center. Derek was thrown against the wall as the lights failed, and emergency systems screamed warnings in 3 languages, and through the chaos he heard something that made his blood run cold: the distinctive whine of plasma weapons firing in controlled bursts. This wasn't an escape attempt. This was an assassination. He found Syria in the corridor defending herself against 3 attackers in Valtorian military armor, and she was losing, because whoever sent them knew exactly how she fought. Derek didn't think, he just moved. He tackled the nearest attacker from behind, using his body weight to drive them into the wall, and grabbed their weapon in one smooth motion that his old drill sergeant would have been proud of. The plasma rifle was designed for hands larger than his. But humans were adaptable, and he made it work and put 2 rounds into the second attacker before they could turn. The third attacker was faster, and their shot caught Derek in the shoulder, and the pain was incredible, like being branded with a star. But he'd broken 3 ribs in a bar fight once and finished the fight before going to the hospital, so he just gritted his teeth and kept moving. He crashed into the attacker and they went down together, and Derek didn't know fancy martial arts, but he knew how to brawl, and he knew that humans could take damage that would drop most species. The fight was brutal and short, and when it ended, Derek was bleeding from multiple wounds, and Syria was staring at him like he was something from a nightmare. "You should be dead," she whispered. "You took hits that would kill any of my soldiers." Derek coughed and tasted copper. "Yeah, well, we're kind of hard to kill. It's this whole thing about evolving on a death world where everything wanted to eat us, so we got stubborn about staying alive." He collapsed then, and the last thing he remembered was Syria catching him and her amber eyes going wide with something that might have been fear or might have been wonder. When Derek woke up, he was in a medical bay and Syria was sitting beside his bed, reading something on a data pad. Her head snapped up when she heard him move, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "Why did you save me?" she asked finally. "You could have escaped in the chaos. Instead, you nearly died protecting me." Derek considered the question seriously because it deserved a serious answer. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "And because despite the whole interrogation thing, you never seemed like you enjoyed it, and that counts for something." Syria looked away, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. "I investigated. Your rebels," she said, "the ones you were supplying, and I found evidence of corruption in my own government, and officials profiting from suffering while blaming it on outside agitators." Derek waited because he could tell there was more. "The people who tried to kill me were sent by those same officials," she continued. "They feared I was getting too close to the truth, and they were probably right." She turned back to him, and her amber eyes held something he hadn't seen before. "Uncertainty. I have spent my entire life serving the Dominion, believing we brought order to chaos," she said. "But you, a human who should hate me after what I did, showed me more honor in one moment than my own people have shown in years." Derek sat up slowly, testing his bandaged shoulder. "So what happens now?" Syria stood and held out a data chip. "This contains everything I found about the corruption and a full record of my interrogation methods and the assassination attempt. And if you take it to your rebel contacts, they can use it to expose the truth." "And you?" Derek asked. "I will face the consequences of my actions," she said with a dignity that made her seem taller. "Somehow, I broke you out and gave you classified information, and I will accept whatever punishment comes." Derek took the chip and then surprised them both by laughing. "You Valtorians really don't do things halfway, do you? All or nothing. Honor or death. No middle ground." Syria frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," Derek said, standing despite the protests from his injuries, "that maybe you stop trying to martyr yourself and instead help us fix this mess you found, because we're going to need someone who knows how your government works, and honestly, you're too useful to waste." "But," she started, "but nothing." Derek interrupted. "Look, my people have a saying that you can't change the past, but you can choose what you do next, and right now you can choose to hide behind duty and honor and all that stuff. Or you can choose to actually make a difference." Syria stared at him, and something in her expression shifted like ice breaking. "In spring, your species is insane," she said, but there was warmth in her voice now, almost affection. "We prefer the term determined," Derek replied with a grin. They left the medical bay together and walked into an uncertain future. But for the first time in her long career, Syria felt like she was finally on the right path, and it had taken a stubborn, impossible human to show her the way. Behind them, alarms began to sound as their escape was discovered, and ahead of them lay danger and difficult choices, and the long, hard work of fighting corruption in a galactic empire. But Derek just kept walking with that same easy confidence that had sustained him through days of interrogation, and Syria found herself matching his pace. Perhaps humans were onto something with their ridiculous optimism and refusal to accept defeat. Perhaps she thought there was something to learn from a species that survived by simply refusing to quit no matter how bad things got. And perhaps, just perhaps, she had found something more valuable than duty or honor in the friendship of one stubborn human smuggler who saved her life when he could have run. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a very long time, Commander Syria wasn't afraid of it.